Okay, perfect. Thank you everyone for joining. I think today you're going to see things you have never seen before, which is a very common practice within Benchmark and I'm sure for Scale, because they're basically pioneers in specific space, which we're going to explore with you today. For those that have family in India, I did want to say our heart goes out to you. I've had lots of messages that have been sad messages that have come through to me this morning. And I hope the world comes together to help. I just wanted to start with that because it's impacting me this morning, and of course everybody else that's impacted by it. With that, I wanted to jump in and just highlight what we're going to talk about today. Everybody's aware of, in organizations, the common practice of RPA and CI/CD. It works really well for security teams, works well for ops teams and development teams, but there's the rest of the business. We want to explore how Scale brings everybody together and supports them all within the context of using digital employees, which takes it to another level, but completely covering a new context of automation, which we'll explore. I know that you don't know too much about who Benchmark is, but I think Scale and Benchmark have very similar DNA. We help organizations build out one of the components of what we consider to be the automation area and arena of CI/CD. We are builders. We're also pioneers in the same way that Scale is. We do not follow the rear view mirror. What you will see today, and the reason why you're so interested today, is what you will never have seen it before, and the question is why us? It's because what you're seeing is not what everybody else is doing. It's the next iteration of automation, and we want to be the architects to build that out for you, to solve the business challenges you have. The pioneering is key, right? Someone has to be the pioneer to bring new capabilities to market. We've seen it numerous times. It's usually where the largest growth is. I'll talk a little about myself before I go forward. Within the industry of DevOps, DevSecOps, that is our core value delivery within Benchmark. We are participating in helping many of those organizations, be it Google or Harness or Dynatrace. We're helping them do product development. We help them implement their customers. And that is where we're helping organizations do what would be the first use case of hyperdigital. Most organizations want to do hyperdigital because it removes toil, it removes waste, it removes all the time that's spent inefficiently trying to get particular content for a customer or yourself. And the first one is, DevOps, DevSecOps related, pipeline pattern-based continuous delivery or continuous integration or continuous deployment, and it's GitOps driven. That is our core competency. We pioneer methods to do very, very strong end-to-end delivery within the context of CI/CD. So one hyperdigital method, delivering software. The second that you're very familiar with is RPA, where you bring in an RPA provider that records either your desktop or something, or you build processes. It's all process-based, repeat function. I'm going to do a lot of stuff in a particular way, the same pattern every single time to process large amounts of requests that are clear. This is where automation and hyperdigital is today. This is where Scale has started pioneering the ad hoc requirements, taking domain expertise that comes from a variety of different groups and making it a user-centric automation experience using digital employees. You need them all. I'm not saying one is better than the other. The thing is, each of these have come out of the desired need to make things more efficient, more effective, with less people, to be honest with you, because technology is adding more capabilities and you're going to focus on your core value. If your core value is a particular piece of software, everything around it that supports it needs to be automated, and you focus on the core value of that software. If you're a bank, it's banking. You don't need to worry about all the other things that are secondary and tertiary that hinder your business from focusing on providing new features to banking. So that's just one example that I wanted to, why organizations do this. It's all the waste, it's all the toil, it's all the sweat. Why sweat on ad hoc when you have a new provider, a new segment that Gartner is going to be covering in the future, that covers what Scale is pioneering. I'm going to go through examples here of a couple of them. I'm not going to do the RPA one because it's too simplistic. But if you take hyper digital experience, where we focus, and where Scale is also pioneering, is creating a process at which software is delivered wherever you want it. And we build all the pipelines. It doesn't really matter which one. It could be a Microsoft pipeline. It could be a Jenkins pipeline. It could be a GitLab pipeline. And then they all go to targets: IBM Cloud, DigitalOcean, OpenShift, VMware, Google, AWS, Azure. It's the process is very repeatable. You could do it declaratively, but the pipes are technically fixed. That solves the need for delivering software in a repeatable, confident way, but it doesn't bring together anybody beyond the DevSecOps space. It leaves behind many business challenges, one that RPA doesn't solve, that people need domain expertise. So I'll shift into what hyper digital for everyone else is, where you have ad hoc domain expertise, user-centric interactions that need to occur that bring it all together. Really what's happening here is you're supporting the sales team, you're supporting the HR team, the analysts, the marketing, the management, yourself, with all of these things that you just do daily, and you always need a specific person that you need to get to. They're your heroes outside of software delivery. We have what we call heroes, and they're SMEs in software delivery. They're the only reason software goes into environments, and they fix things when they break. But you're always dependent on them to be available. And it's a lot of stress and a lot of burden on these key influencers and key SMEs. The context here is this is beyond software delivery. This goes into requests. I need a particular data to do my job. Who has it? The answer becomes the digital assistant. This is not as many would think, chatbots. This is not chatbots. This is not RPA. This is a digital assistant that brings domain expertise, draws on different domain expertise to give everybody what they're looking for and have an interaction model that supports them, similar to what CI/CD does to remove heroes in this space. This does the same thing for ad hoc requests within the business that happen all the time. I'll leave Mike the chance to explain what this is. Hopefully I've enticed, but that's the context behind it. So with that, I don't want to steal the story here. So I want to welcome Mike. He is the country manager for Scale, and hopefully he likes his headshot. I always like to make people feel a little uneasy. With that, I'll hand over my presenter rights and host to Mike.
That's great. Thank you so much, Shlomo. I'm not super happy with that photo, but you know, beggars can't be choosers in the digital age. I'm just gonna try and share my system here. Oh, it's asking me to change one of my settings. Probably should have done this a minute or two ago. What the heck? Okay.
You could upload it or choose to share a window. Either one would suffice.
That's not allowing me to share, to be honest. So I don't quite understand why that is.
If you want, you can make me host.
True is a user-centric hyper-automation company. As a business, we're focused on building out this SaaS-based platform that helps make employees and customers' lives easier through workforce automation. And we couldn't do that without partners like Benchmark that have relationships with customers that bring consulting expertise, professional services expertise, and as Shlomo explained, are pioneers in their own right. We're all, as a partnership, thinking about the technology that's coming tomorrow, because we want to help our customers and our partners understand the world of what's possible going forward. So as I briefly touched on, SKAEL is a user-centric hyper-automation platform. Our purpose in life is helping customers eliminate and reduce the amount of administrivia and repetitive, boring tasks that each of us are facing in our daily lives as knowledge workers. And I think if you would do a quick poll of your teams, particularly as we've been going through COVID and having to conduct huge parts of our lives on a digital platform, you'd find that your teams are overwhelmed. And certainly this is what the studies are showing. People are suffering from information overload. There is a wide proliferation of different applications that they all need to use to get their jobs done. They have to be experts with all of these different applications. There are multiple data sources within most organizations. Very often data is very siloed. And so you've got high value employees and high performing talent that unfortunately is spending too much time finding data, transferring it between applications, updating and reporting on it. And this is something that we think represents a great opportunity within many organizations to help organize and streamline that. Can you advance to the next slide, please? Shlomo?
As your digital assistant, no problem.
Oh, look at that. So here are a couple of proof points that I think reinforce this thought and this idea. According to, and I won't read through all of these, and we'll certainly make this presentation available to everybody who's attending this webinar. We get reports that anywhere from 1.8 hours a day to 2.5 hours a day is wasted by knowledge workers, employees looking for and gathering data, searching for information. I thought this was an interesting survey that Search Your Cloud did recently. It takes up to 8 attempts to find the data that employees are looking for. All of that adds up to an opportunity to create more streamlining. And it's not weird and wonderful examples. If you think about, the idea that a senior manager or a boss is going to ask you to pull a report of the latest sales data, based on your organization, you may have multiple different ERP systems aligned with different business units. Within each of those business units, there may have been acquisitions done, and so you may have different data sources of varying degrees and ages. I think these are pretty common challenges that exist in many organizations, large and small today. Can you advance, please? I thought that it would be useful to put some metrics around this issue. And I'm a firm believer in this idea that time is money. And I think this is a quote that is attributed to Benjamin Franklin, who said, "Time spent wisely is about making money. Time spent unproductively is wasteful." And so if 2 hours a day is a number that makes sense and you can consider reasonable, I've extrapolated that out to show that that amounts to 63 working days a year. And, with a quick search on my friend Google, I found that the average knowledge worker costs an organization $66,000 a year. So if you think about that, 2 hours per day per knowledge worker for a company with 500 knowledge workers, that's $9.2 million of lost productivity, or money that could go to the profitability and the bottom line of an organization. Can you advance, please? But it's not just about the savings. There are also many reports out there that identify that employees would much rather focus their time and energy on complex tasks and using their experience and their creativity in fulfilling their job requirements than being focused on the administrivia. And equally, there are lots of reports out there. I cited one here from Capgemini that identify that customer satisfaction scores are also improving for those organizations that are starting to embrace automation and doing that in an intelligent way. Because what we're not talking about is a simple chat bot hanging off the end of a telco's website that you need to ask it exactly the right question in exactly the right way in order for it to be of any help and use to you. Next slide. So we believe we can help. And as we've talked about already a little bit, we're focused in this area that Gartner is now calling hyperautomation. We're a SaaS-based platform, which means that we offer this service from any number of cloud platforms. And hyperautomation really is a next generation technology and concept that combines a number of building blocks that have come before it. Things like robotic process automation, machine learning, natural language processing, process mining, and analytics. All of these things come together holistically within the SKAEL platform to be able to help companies quickly and easily identify opportunities for process automation and allow organizations to build out workforce automation. And I've invited Jason Mattis to join this call. Jason is the director of our sales engineering team. And in a minute, I'm going to turn things over to him, and he's going to take you through a demonstration and show you exactly the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Next slide. I think of our hyperautomation platform as really consisting of three important elements. The first is the platform almost operates like a piece of middleware in that we can accept connections into multiple different applications, multiple different data sources, be they structured or unstructured. So we can connect common applications like Salesforce or ServiceNow or Workday or Office 365, as well as more proprietary applications that might have been written several years ago or are homegrown, as long as they have APIs or we have a way to attach the platform to the database or the Excel spreadsheets that power it. Layered on top of that connectivity is a powerful workflow engine. We really break things down in drag and drop format to triggers, actions, and outputs. And we can create workflows in minutes or hours built around the principle that in order to start a process, you've got to have a trigger that's going to initiate it. You could have multiple different actions. You could have multiple iterations of actions, if-then type scenarios. And then once you've done that calculation or analytics or math, there's a natural output, whether that's a presentation layer, demonstrating a graph or a table, sending an email or an SMS message to somebody who's next in the chain of approval, or taking data from one application and populating it into three others, as a single source of data. The third piece and the user-centric piece of all of this is we want to position our technology as one that doesn't displace the human, but rather assists the human in getting their job done. And so end users would interact with this hyperautomation platform through a digital employee that they would work with, and it would exist in any of the common off-the-shelf collaboration tools that are available today. So we work with Slack, Microsoft Teams, Google Chat, any number of products. And so just as you might use a tool like Teams to ask a question of one of your peers or a colleague in finance or HR, that's the way that this platform comes to life for organizations, is instead engaging in a conversation with a digital employee over a collaboration platform. Next slide. And again, we're standing on the shoulders of the technologies that have come before us, and we're excited about being a next generation platform that really combines many of these technologies that you may already be using and familiar with, but putting them together in one holistic and complete package. And why is that important? It means that you as the customer don't need to be the systems integrator to stitch all of these pieces together. We've gone to the effort and taken the energy to ensure that the API connectivity works properly with the process workflow and interacts conversationally with the digital employee. So it really is a complete package that allows organizations to really start connecting APIs and data and creating workflow within hours of starting to use the platform. Next slide. And so you may be thinking to yourself, well, where would you get started? And so this slide represents a number of the areas within different business units that we're helping organizations today. In finance, we can help with the automation of things like accounts payable or managing receivables. In an IT department, we're doing a lot of work helping IT organizations automate level 1 and level 2 service desk. In the realm of people and culture, we're working with HR departments to help the onboarding of new employees, giving employees on day one access to all the tools and systems that they need to do their jobs effectively. And so, there are ideas here for the types of things that can be automated within many organizations, but certainly our platform is open-ended, which means that we can really accept connections into any types of systems and data sources. So I don't want to give you the impression that you're limited to these things. And certainly we and our partner Benchmark would be very interested and excited about having a follow-up conversation if you have ideas about things that you're interested in automating that aren't represented here. Next slide. And so I'm coming to the end of my part of the presentation, and we'll hand it over to Jason just now. But I really wanted to reiterate a couple of important points here about what makes this digital workforce platform as powerful as it is. It's a low-code SaaS platform, which means it's really easy to set up and quick to get going. We've developed a natural language processing engine within our platform, which means that digital employees are more than chatbots that you may have seen or had some familiarity with. They can really handle quite complex conversational narrative. They can deal with typos and spelling mistakes and not necessarily asking questions in exactly the right way. And we built a lot of that human interaction into the platform itself. And we're taking advantage of all of the latest developments in artificial intelligence and machine learning to ensure that the platform continues to learn as it executes on these tasks and improves and gets more intuitive over time. Next slide. And that's it for me. So I know we've got some time at the end for questions, but now I'd like to turn things over to Jason, and hopefully he'll be able to share his screen in order to show you a demonstration.
Hi, Jason. I've shared presentation rights to you, Jason. You should have the share button now at the bottom of your WebEx.
Yep, thank you, Shlomo.
You're most welcome.
Let me start my video so you guys can see me while I'm doing this. Alrighty. So I figure any sales engineer worth their salt should be able to know how to do sharing in WebEx. So fingers crossed we make this work, right? All right. So here's what we're going to do. You guys can see my screen, correct?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. So here's what we're going to do. Here's what I'm going to show you guys today. We are going to do a sales operations demo because it touches multiple different aspects of the business. And what we're going to do today is I'm going to talk to our digital employee, June. I'm going to have some conversations with her about deal data, about closing some information, checking status of other information, adding notes to certain opportunities. All of this is to give you the idea that we want people to be comfortable using their platform of choice, like Mike mentioned, either being Microsoft Teams, Slack, whatever, to interface with the company. And so you don't have to learn how to interface with all these different applications. You interface with one. And in this sense, the digital employee does the back end heavy work, right? So in today's case, I'm going to be using Salesforce, ServiceNow, UPS, PandaDocs, which is an e-signature tool, and Slack. But you can very easily use FedEx, HubSpot, Zendesk, DocuSign, and Microsoft Teams. It doesn't matter to us. But the important thing is think about how you would utilize this activity here, where you take care of some of the back end drudgery work that we like to call it, through this familiar interface that the employees are comfortable with. So first, we're going to say hello to June. Let me get the screen here. And June's going to respond back and say, hey, Jason, how you doing? I'm June, and this is what I do. Now, we understand that many people are on various different phases of understanding how to interact with an automation of any sort, right? So we have the idea or the understanding that you would have buttons and free-form text that you would want people to use. And so I'll show you kind of a mix of both in what we do with June here and explain a little bit more of how we get to this process here on the back end and some of the Q&A. So first, I'm going to click on Sales Dashboard. And this Sales Dashboard is just going to show a high-level information of data that I'm pulling directly from Salesforce. So I'm not pulling these reports from Salesforce so much as I'm pulling all the information that you see here in my Salesforce account and recreating it here in a quick graph. I'm not going to some report in Salesforce. I'm pulling the raw data and creating this myself. So I can manipulate this in any different way that I would like to from the toolset perspective. But today we're just going to show you a couple of different ways to look at this information. First, I'm going to start with sales reports. And the idea here is from either an end user through the sales rep or like a sales manager and such. You want to understand a couple of things. One, you want to understand, how commissions are working, what the win-loss report is as an example. So if I click on win-loss report, I can quickly come up and say, okay, this is the data that I'm looking for to show how I'm doing overall for my deals. And so I can see here we're being very lucky. We have a very high win rate, and we have information based on the data that we've collected here about what our total acquisition is of revenue versus what we've lost because of whatever reason. And if I want to go into some more reports here, let me go into a deals created report as an example. And this is where we try to show people not everything needs to be done via a button. So in this case, you're saying, hey, ask me, show me deals created last week. I'm going to say, show me deals created yesterday. And in this case, which is not the most interesting in the world, I've only created one deal. So if I'm a little curious on that one, show me deals created last month. And you see here, even as I've misspelled created, it's still working for me. And it's giving me all the deals that I've closed for the last period since March. And I can do this for any specific amount of time, if it's for this month, last year, this year, whatever. But all I've done in this season, I've created one ask inside of my backend to fulfill all these different requests that may be asked for based on a different time period for these different users, right? So the idea here is twofold. One, we want to simplify how you develop in the back end, and I can show that to you in a bit. But two, we want to give as much flexibility to the end user as possible, because we're going to ask as end users a myriad different host of questions at any given time. And so we want customers to be able to be very fluid in their conversations here. So let me take us back to the sales dashboard. And there are a couple other ways we can look at information here. We can create a new deal. Let me create a quick deal here. So in this sense, this is where we're taking form information. Assuming you just came out of a call with somebody, you can take the information from a calendar invite as an example. I don't have that in June, but we've taken information where I say, hey, do you want to create a deal out of this meeting? Absolutely. You pull the customer information in to Salesforce, and all the data from that meeting comes in. You can add notes and such, which I'll show you here in a second. So the name of the new deal here is, we'll call it Benchmark 1. Close date, we'll put 2021-09-01. Deal stage, qualification. Deal amount. This is a big one. All right, so now I have a deal inside of Benchmark that I have created here. If I go in and refresh this, you should now see Benchmark 1 as an opportunity that I've created in this one. So that's all well and good. It's nice to see that we create stuff, but more importantly, the salespeople want to close business. And there are a couple of things that we concern ourselves with when we talk about closing business. So I'm going to put in here from the option that I show in the sales dashboard, I can come back and close a deal via a button press here where I do updated sales engagement and then close it. But I'm going to do freeform. I closed the Tesla deal today. Now this is June responding back and saying, hey, this is a good deal. I'll see if I can validate some information for you first. Now June's not responding here because June has asked Autumn, who is an asset support person who has access to UPS, a question. Said, hey, does the address on the Tesla deal make sense? Is it accurate? And Autumn's responded back and say, hey, there's no valid address deal. There's no valid address tied to the opportunity. Please review this deal before you can close it. So in this case, now I'm given a link to come directly into my Tesla deal. And you can see here from a details perspective, the billing address, Somewhere, California, does not exist. And it's not going to allow me to close that deal. And so we're not just going to keep running through different process flows without some kind of error checking. You'd want to do that because you don't want to send an invoice into nowhere. And so in this case, we've added some additional activities that require kind of a check and balance system for when you close deals to make sure all the activity is correct. So in this case, now I'll go back to June and say I closed another deal. And we'll do yesterday. All right, so the same thing's going to happen here, and you can already tell that this has become a solid deal. Autumn didn't come back and complain to us. The address was validated, and we also have an MSA that has been created. And you see now Drew has come up, and I'll show you Drew here in a second. But let me come back to the opportunities here. And you'll see now as this refreshes that Paper Trail has now been closed with the close date of yesterday. And in PandaDocs, I now have an MSA that has pulled the data from Salesforce to populate the template that has been created here, right? So the idea is you put in data once and then you never have to touch it again, reduces a ton of errors, and simplifies the process flow for you as a user. So if I go back into Drew here as an example, so let me make sure that this is log back in here. Bear with me one second. All right, so you see I've created a company in Dunder Mifflin, and the organization has also been created here from the perspective of a user organization inside of ServiceNow. And that's what Drew has done here as well. Drew created it. You can see that the ticket number is 13981. Like we showed over here, it's 13981. So in that sense, again, we're taking information from multiple different systems. We're taking information from one system, throwing it through to multiple different systems without having to type anything additional ourselves because we've already put it in our system of record, which in this case is salesforce.com. So, and then we'll briefly go into Doug here as another piece that I can show here. The point I want to bring up here as I bring up Doug just briefly is that all of the data that we process through here is not held in our systems at all. The way we look at information generally, that information belongs to you as a company. And so when we process any activity, we take data in, we process it in memory, we output that data. And as soon as we output that data, we don't hold that data anymore. We don't store it because we figure the next time we run a process for you, that data is going to change. Excuse me. So in this case, this is the last piece I'll show here for you. This is Doug. I set up Doug over the course of probably 45 minutes last week. I was asked by my internal team to say, hey, if I know that there's an issue in one of my processes in the back end, I want to be notified every time it happens from a platform called Sentry. And so I have a link here to my specific issue, and I've got tickets that I'm creating inside of ServiceNow. So if I click into this ticket here, I now go back into ServiceNow, and not only do I have the ticket information saying something is going on with Sentry's issue here, I've actually pulled log data from Google Sheets, or not from Google Sheets, from Google Cloud. And as I open that data here, you can see that I have these log error data that I can use to continue troubleshooting, or I could even go so far as to pull this data in, process it, and do some more further analysis with it. But right now I've just been asked to say, hey, here's the data, I've got a ticket created, here's the log data that's tied through. So I'm trying to combine as many pieces of information together first before I have an IT person start troubleshooting. So this is a lot of what I've shown on the front end. I haven't shown you anything about the back end. Oh, let me move this again here. Hold on. About the back end here. But just to briefly show that, this is all here and real. This is our back end platform that we have all of our digital employees created in. And I can show you some data flows and interactions and such that we play in here. But let me stop and give a chance to have panelists or attendees ask some questions, and we can try to do some more dedicated responses.
So for those that are attendees, you can go into the Q&A and post any questions that you're asking for, and we can try to solve them on this call for you.
Jason, while we're waiting on a question,
Sure.
talk about how long it takes a customer, let's say, who's using this for the first time. How long would it take them to get the API and data source connections created and start creating workflows?
So you can start creating workflows very quickly. I think the challenge at some point, depending on the organization, is getting access to the data, and that can always be the case, especially for security concerns, right? So what we look at there is we have a way to mask credentials for an admin to provide to any business user, because the idea here is that we want the business to be able to build these flows with support from IT to have access to those APIs, right? So once you have access to the APIs, that can take anywhere from a couple of minutes to a couple of days, depending on what the requirements are for the organization to allow access. And then once you have that data, you can build within 2-3 minutes your first connection, and then start processing against that data. You'd probably have something that you can use of value within 90 minutes to 2 hours. So I've done several demonstrations with customers where we've built a digital employee on the fly to provide some information back.
We have some questions coming through, some on the chat and some on the Q&A. How configurable is the API for payloads sent to scale? Does it have ML on the payloads sent?
So we are very flexible in how we receive data, right? So I can go in here from a triggers perspective. Let me go into here, just a high level one. So this is a data flow piece here. So I can take information in pretty much any fashion from a data source, right? I can take a webhook from a different system, and that can have any level of information in the payload that we can adjust to. Or I can do information on a schedule or pull information from different systems like Mike talked about as an initial trigger based on a schedule for those events. And so that information then gets processed through different actions where I can again pull more data. And as an example here, this is a high level pull where I'm getting data from this is just dummy data, right, about different people. And as I have that data, it's now become available to me to use in subsequent tasks. But I can pull any API with any get, put, post, delete function. And if I need to, I can use different headers or parameters as required for the individual APIs, because we know that APIs generally are really cool, but they are really diverse. And so the way we built this is as open as possible for you to pull data in as required. And then if you need to have your own content here for JSON, text, XML, whatever, you can do that in here to give you as much flexibility in your connection points to your systems as possible. Now, the ML piece that you talked about is interesting, right? Because that plays into the underpinnings of the platform generally. So the idea is from using natural language to using document analysis, that kind of thing, that is kind of baked in a little bit more to the platform on the back end. That's something we should probably save to show you guys if you're more interested in a separate call, because it really is just woven into the fabric of what we've done. We actually have an AI team dedicated just to that kind of functionality here. It's that important to us. So that's hopefully that answers the question at a good level.
So like from a DevOps perspective, the extensibility of your API is key. That's how we run everything. No one wants to maintain plugins themselves. They just want to use native APIs so that they don't have to maintain the the mess around plugins upgrading and things. So I love it. I think the API extensibility would match up with any person that's in DevOps capabilities as well. There's more questions. Is it a web platform to work and speak with the digital employees? Do you have apps that can be installed on mobile devices? What's your interaction model?
Yeah, so the interaction model is, so I use Slack on my phone, right? And I can use, the same way I interacted with Slack on my screen, I can interact on my phone with a digital employee in the same manner, right? Because it's the same application. Remember, as Mike spoke, we don't have our own front end because we don't want the customers to have to learn yet another interface. And so the idea is, if you have Teams on your phone, if you've got Teams on the web, all that, we don't necessarily care where you use the tool. We just care that we interact with that tool for you so that barrier to entry is reduced for the end user.
I'll comment on that. If someone doesn't have a collaboration tool that you integrate with, or do you have a roadmap to provide your own interaction method?
I don't know that we do, because that would go against what we're trying to set up.
Okay. There's an additional question. Oh, sorry.
But slow-mo, sorry, one other point. We can integrate with other applications if the process itself doesn't naturally lend itself to that interaction. And so there are examples of work we've done where we integrate that process automation into an existing ITSM platform, for example.
I was just exploring for those that may be asking a question because maybe they didn't have those types of tools, but we can, I mean, it makes sense that you would use every collaboration tool that's available to an organization. That way you're not a collaboration tool, you're more of the intelligence behind it. So I understand the need. Yep. So this one, I've thought about it. I thought of asking the question too. How is this different than any other RPA product like Blue Prism? I think you need to help distinguish the use cases.
Yeah. So Blue Prism, I've had a lot of conversations about this recently, surprisingly enough. So when I look at Blue Prism, UiPath, and Automation Anywhere, the way they build process flows, like this connect function I have right here, ties directly into a data set. That's one ask that I'm having my system do. To do the same thing in a UiPath or an Automation Anywhere, as an example, would be several steps, like 9 or 10 even, right? I've got to teach the system to open a web browser. I've got to teach it where to click on the web browser, what data to enter, and all that jazz. And that entire process flow, just to pull that first set of data down, gets really cumbersome and brittle. If anything changes on the screen, you have to rebuild that entire flow. And Blue Prism is in a similar way, although they're probably closer to us than UiPath and Automation Anywhere are, in terms of all the information you need to know to set up the initial flow just to pull data down. And so the idea here is, let's get rid of all of that. Let's not worry about having to set up a mirror image or a DVR version of what you're doing on your computer, and let's just go straight to the data, because that gives us a whole lot less of a platform infrastructure that we have to manage to, and the customer the same way, right? When you look at what the different current RPA vendors have to do, there's a lot of hidden infrastructure that the end users never really see or have to worry about. Because they never understand that. But the IT teams, you bet they know about that, because they have to orchestrate, manage, create all of these different bots that they're using, and they have to house it in virtual machines that can explode in the back end, right? And we get rid of all of that because there's no need for us to mirror or mimic a desktop environment to run our process.
Thanks.
I think the
any
other
additional
I've heard from customers, Shlomo, is just the holistic nature of our platform. It's complete. Everything is in there that you need, versus having to have other bolt-on or stitched in components with some of those other players you mentioned.
I'll ask a question, because I've met with other organizations that spend 1 to 2 years building a center of excellence around an RPA product. In many cases, it's Blue Prism. What do you comment to someone saying, I need to stand up an entirely dedicated team, run multi-year to get a center of excellence around RPA? What's your comment to people who are making those plans?
Is it bad to say good on you? The interesting piece there is that there's value in a tool, right? And how you want to use it is up to the individual customer, right? There's benefit that you can see in every tool in some respect, right? The interest is that why take that long to set up a center of excellence in the first place? If you know what your processes are, and you know what needs to change. One of the interesting points I distinguish as well is that when you look at your processes, every company, ours included, are going to have broken processes. And the RPA companies generally will say, well, let's fix your process first before we start doing any automation work into that. And I'm thinking, well, that's a big unfortunate waste, right? Because if I have a 45-minute process and I can reduce that broken 45-minute process to 10 minutes, I'm instantly saving 35 minutes. And that's a big time savings. Now, I can still do a whole lot to reduce those 10 minutes down into seconds even, but the idea is let's iterate through that process change for you with an immediate result. And so if you want to set up a center of excellence to understand process flows and automation, that's great. But you should be looking at weeks to months, not years.
So you're taking the iterative agile approach, which again aligns with what CI/CD proposes, not rip and replace everything and try to build the entire process end to end. It's more of find the most pain points, put in a piece, fix that pain point, and move to the next one incrementally, because then you shorten the time it takes for MVPs. I'm totally aligned along those lines. Like I didn't agree with like highlighting building a center of excellence of multi-year is not something you want to highlight. It's something that's wrong. It represents falling behind technology. I didn't say anything in these discussions, but that was what I was thinking. I think you're going to have new processes that you need to manage. If you're spending multi-year trying to fix a couple of them and building out a center of excellence, you're just going to have more technical debt that you won't catch up to.
Yeah,
your
you're that much
approach
further
is
behind.
really good.
Yeah. And I tell you, even June that we've shown you guys today, June has been iterative, right? When I started with June, she did one thing, and now she can do so many things in the back end for us in our demo purposes. It's fun to see the changes that you can do here just in 5-10 minutes of adjustments, right? You're limited by ideas.
Yeah. I had a CIO at a major financial institution tell me that with legacy RPA, it would take him 9 to 12 months to fully automate a process. And he felt that his business changed more dynamically than that. And so that was a non-starter for him, that he needed to have a technology solution that was going to be more agile and more flexible, because that's part of the digital transformation that they're trying to operate under as a business.
Yeah, if I can share a little bit more from a speed perspective, right? So we had a customer who asked us, we initially engaged with them back in the summertime, and they hemmed and hawed, and we kept saying, what do you want to do? November, they said, hey, this is really interesting. Let's try and make something happen. And we closed the deal on December 16th. And then they said, oh, by the way, we need this by the end of the year. And I look at my watch. I'm like, wait a minute. Did you say by the end? That's 2 weeks. And so the interesting piece is by the time we got to December 30th, we had that product essentially completed for what we could with them. There was an entire separate section that we couldn't build to because they had to do user interface. And that's, Shlomo, a good example. There was a user interface that the customer didn't have. We wouldn't build it because we didn't have the capabilities or the time resources really on our dev side. They got another third party in, we worked with them, and the subsequent month they built that user interface that we adapted our build to, but we built our base foundation for them in 3 days.
Awesome.
So we hit the end of the year mark for them.
I always say to organizations, try not to use your fixed mindset approach. Look at a growth mindset. This is how I distinguish you from RPA. RPA, in many cases, when you're doing it, you're taking it from a fixed mindset. This is what I'm going to change, and this is what I'm going to automate. On your side, it's more of growth. I want to give you the capabilities to continuously improve incrementally.
Absolutely.
Focus on the improvements, not on the end design. And keep improving across the board. I think that's very important to highlight and identify what distinguishes from other vendors out there. It's not, I'm going to record everything you do. I'm going to augment your abilities as much as I can, any little place I can, and until you reach the point where you're doing it all, but you're going to grow. It's the grow portion is more important than the outcome, which I think most organizations miss. Again, tools are not about buying capabilities. It's about your ability to grow with those capabilities. I wanted to touch on that because that's the same within CI/CD. Any organization that thinks they can just build a pipeline that becomes brittle and not think that it's going to change, there's no finished. you need to incrementally track it, measure it, and keep improving. Don't go end to end. So I think with that, unless you have anything else, I think we've exhausted the questions, but thank you so much, Mike. I know we had a few bumps, but everybody does. It's the digital world today. I wanted to also thank Jason for sharing that that demonstration. It was really insightful because it demonstrates the differences between what people are doing today and why you're a pioneer in this space. We just have to educate the market and how you can do things in a more of a growth mindset rather than a fixed end-to-end process.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate the time.
That's great. Thanks, Shlomo. Thanks to everybody for participating today, and we'd welcome an opportunity to have some one-on-one discussion and look at how we could benchmark and scale together could help you improve some processes within your business. So thanks again for attending.
Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Yep.
Thank you, guys.